My ego had basically kind of taken me hostage with my time in music. I was like all about the next accolade, all about the next this, the next check, the next that, until I just had a mental breakdown basically, and I lost everything financially, and I had a near-death experience at this time. So it's weird, man. It's like the universe will first like whisper to us, and then it'll like tap us on the shoulder, and then if we don't listen, I feel like it just like clobbers us with like a cosmic 2x4.
I've had it a couple of times, I think, that sort of sense that I was unable to receive information or messages until it became unignorable.
Yeah.
Part of my practice now, like step 10 in 12-step terms, and in more sort of mystical terms, I've heard sort of a druidic friend of mine says listening to the whispers of the winds, which means like sort of just staying tuned. In my prayer every morning, I ask to be in tune with what I call like, just the signs and symbols of the day.
I love that.
So that I see, and sometimes it's subtle things, synchronicity. Like when you said that you were taken hostage by your ego, I think that's the cultural norm. That's the norm. That's most people.
And I feel like one thing that can be antithetical to ego is almost connection. So I created connection as magic, right? So I would love to know your thoughts on why is connection so magic? It's like they say the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection, right?
I know that quote, and I agree with it, that quote, that connection, whether it's connection to yourself, others, or a higher power or a higher set of principles, I think connection is really important. I also heard Carlo Rovelli, the quantum physicist, recently say that at the most rudimentary level of reality, matter doesn't exist except for in relationship to other matter. So he's talking about the sub-particular realm, a realm that's like literally impossible for us to imagine. We're not even talking about atoms and neurons or electrons here. We're talking about whatever the fuck goes on below that level. All of us exist in relationship. There is the inner world and the outer world. Perhaps there is a division here. There is communication between all of us. So for me, that is an interesting way of highlighting the significance of connection, that reality itself requires connection. Reality can't exist in a sort of a singular space.
Seems like it's harder to get lost in our ego if we're in service or thinking about others. Does that make sense? It seems like it's protection almost against our ego running away with us.
In the 12 steps, that's the sort of fundamental principle, Samson, is that the summit of spiritual endeavor is service, that we're not on a spiritual quest so that we can sit on our own in a cave and meditate.
Yeah.
We're engaged in spiritual practice so that we can help people in a very sort of Christian way, like help the poor, feed the hungry, that kind of deal. And like that, there's practice to it. That way we know we're doing it.
I had a guest on, Russell, on my podcast recently. He's a music guy, a music producer, and he said, you didn't belong in the music business because you actually cared about people. I mean, this guy said this to me with a straight face. Even in the film industry, I feel like there's maybe a lot more Harvey Weinstein types than there are grounded individuals, who actually care, if that makes sense. I just would love to have you go on that.
I think you're right. I think these problems are systemic. And I think that, to be honest, that the answer is perhaps simpler than we might have imagined. And it comes down to capitalism, and capitalism demands profit, the creation of surplus wealth. That means you have to take people's labor and create profit from it. Now, when you're working in the arts in particular, you're dealing somewhat with mysticism, at least when it's any good. And if you're dealing in the commodification of mysticism, that's a kind of reverse alchemy. It's the turning of gold into lead. Yeah. And so I suppose what it is in the industries we worked in, I've met amazing people in film and music, and I've got friends that work in high finance that are amazing, lovely stock market traders that are like full of heart and sort of spirit and see it as a game and it's not real and all of that. But like the systems, that's in fact part of the problem, is that the individual is ultimately redundant. And Yanis Varoufakis, the former leader of Syriza, said that when he met like the most powerful person in the EU, who was some sort of German politician, who was the treasury minister or whatever, he said that he recognized that this person only had the power that role afforded him. So that person couldn't ever go, hey, why don't we just get rid of all debt? And that person is not allowed to do that. So the system is static. There can be some transitions within the system. Oh, this week this is the big famous music star. This week this is the but actually the system is remaining the same. So the whatever values that system is built upon, the ultimate values it's built upon is profit. Take a case like Harvey Weinstein, like he would have been, his behavior was tolerated because he had the power that came from the wealth that he generated. People with no money can't carry on like that.